evening, everyone, and welcome to Montgomery College and our beautiful Cultural Arts Center. We like to refer to this building as the community's living room, and we really enjoy hosting events like this. My name is Brad Stewart, and I have the honor of being the Vice President and Provost of Montgomery College's Tacoma Park Silver Spring campus. This is the original campus of Montgomery College, although you're in the new side of town. The original buildings for the campus are over on New York and Fenton Street in the city of Tacoma Park. So it is my pleasure to extend greetings to all of you on behalf of the president of Montgomery College, who's really responsible for everything that Edwin said that we do here, Dr. Darian Pollard, and Mr. Reginald Felton, the chair of our Board of Trustees. Dr. Pollard and Chair Felton would also like to extend a special welcome to the dignitaries who are here with us tonight, including the Ambassador of El Salvador to the United States, Francisco Alchu, the former Ambassador of the United States in El Salvador, William Walker, and the permanent representative of El Salvador to the Organization of American States, Francisco Lainez. Welcome, gentlemen. Montgomery College is honored to host this celebration of the 23rd anniversary of the signing of the peace agreement in El Salvador. We are pleased to host this event because it further strengthens the educational partnership between the Salvadoran community in the National Capital Region and Montgomery College. To us, this idea makes perfect sense. You see, this semester alone, there are 413 students registered at Montgomery College who identify as being from El Salvador, and several dozen faculty and staff who have worked for us for some just a short while and some for decades. I am convinced that bigger and better things lie ahead for both Montgomery College and the Salvadoran community in this partnership. So thank you for this opportunity to welcome everyone, and please enjoy our wonderful program this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stewart. Next, we have a very special guest. During the 80s, he represented the political interest of the Revolutionary Democratic Front and its diplomatic committee in the United States, providing analysts of El Salvador to the United States Congress, academies, and opinion leaders of the country. It is my honor to present His Excellency, Ambassador Francisco Alchu.
Ambassador Francisco Lainez, permanent representative of El Salvador in the OAS, Dr. Brad Stewart, Vice President and Provost of Montgomery County, Dr. Sharon Fechter, Dean of Humanities, Montgomery College, former Ambassador to the United States, Ambassador William Walker, and Mr. Ike Leggett. It is my pleasure to be here in this opportunity to thank you for being here and perhaps talk a little bit about why we are doing this in Montgomery College. This is the 23rd anniversary of the Peace Accords, something that is fundamental in our history, in our life, something that we have been celebrating every year. But this time we decided that this is the moment of the young people, and that it is fundamental that the new generations know what happened. Because if we don't learn, we don't know our history, and we do not learn from our history, we are probably make the same mistakes that we made before. So I would briefly talk a little bit about how, at least I see at this moment, our country after 23 years of the signing of the Peace Accords. Just before I came here, I had an interview from a TV station, and they said, and one of the questions was, why celebrate the Peace Accords? El Salvador is now in a very violent situation. So what have the Peace Accords accomplished? And I think it's a valid question that deserves an answer. I think that the Peace Accords are like the famous example of the glass half full or half empty. Some people might see it as half empty. I personally see it as half full. And why do I say this? Well, let's remember what was happening in El Salvador before the Peace Accords, during the war, but also even before the war started. El Salvador was considered to be one of the worst violators of human rights, one of the countries where the most violations of human rights occurred. People were killed, disappeared, tortured because of their political thoughts, because they dared to express their thinking. Tens of priests, nuns, religious people were assassinated, including, of course, our martyr, Monsignor Romero. Political rights were not respected. There were political parties that had been proscribed. Political leaders were in jail or exiled. And we have been living for many years processes of fraudulent elections, or even when elections and when the opposition had won the elections, these had not been respected. Labor rights were not respected. There were assassinated labor leaders, incarcerated labor leaders. Peaceful demonstrations were attacked with military force. No strike was ever declared legal. The army was omnipotent and omnipresent. The major decisions in the country were taken by the military, being their political, economic decisions. They were the ones who decided who the president was going to be, or removed the president when it was convenient. And during the war, many atrocities were committed. There was no respect for the non-civilian combatants. We had many massacres, like in Mosote, probably the most well known, but that is just one of many. Indiscriminate bombings of civilian population and so forth. At the political level, there was no real separation of powers. It was the executive branch who basically ruled over the legislative power and the judicial system. And we could go on and on. After 23 years, after ending the war, how is the conditions of the country today? Right now, we have an absolute respect for human rights. It is true that people are dying in El Salvador, being killed, but not because of the way they think, not because of their political position, and certainly not on the hands of any government institution. Just recently, El Salvador was appointed as a member of the United Nations Commission on Human Rights, as precisely, I think, a recognition of the advances that El Salvador has made in terms of respecting human rights. The peace process of El Salvador that we are celebrating now is considered throughout the world as an example. The fact that we were able to overcome 10 years of a cruel and violent war, and that through a painstaking process of dialogue and negotiation, but we were able to come together and find solutions that allowed us to end the war, lay down the arms, and start a new path in building our democratic process and our democratic institutions. The army was purged of some of its elements, and right now, the Salvadorian army is one of the institutions that is most widely respected by the population, and is now circumscribed to what its constitutional role is, which is to guarantee the national sovereignty of the country. It has become a non-deliberate and non-apolitical body, as it should be. The security forces which were responsible for so many violations of human rights have disappeared, and instead we have a new national civilian police under civilian control, who by everybody's terms is a body that is completely respectful of the human rights of the population. In terms of our democratic process, we have had 6 elections in the signing of the Peace Accords. We have had an alternance in power. So 4 elections were won by one party. The last 2 ones have been won by the opposition party. This was unthinkable, unthinkable before the peace process. We have created new democratic institutions. We have a new Supreme Electoral Tribunal who has conducted what everybody has said are free and fair elections. We have gone through a process of electoral reform, which is permitting and allowing the population to be more participatory and more authentically in a democratic way. We have now a real separation of powers. There even has been some situations in which there has been some confrontation between the legislative branch, the executive branch, the judicial branch, as is here and as should be. And we have an Office of a Human Rights Ombudsman. We have a law for access of free information, other institutions that guarantee the transparency in the use of public funds, and so forth. So, to be brief, I would summarize that the Peace Accords did not solve all the problems of the country. They were not designed to that. They were designed to stop the war, and they did that. But it also laid the ground for the improvements, is what I call the 3 Ds, the 3 big Ds. Democratization, by consolidating our democratic process and our democratic institutions, the respect for human rights, and the demilitarization of society. We have certainly advanced in those ways. That is why I think that the glass is half full, because before the Peace Accords there was nothing here. Now we have half of the glass full, but we can see that we still have space for filling up the glass. And that is why it's important to have events like this, not only to see to the past and see what we have accomplished, but to also see to the future and get strength from what we have accomplished to make a commitment to continue working towards the future to fill up this glass. What is the elements that we have to put in here? We have to continue strengthening our democratic institutions. We have to work very hard in improving the living conditions of the majority of the population, particularly the most poor sectors of the population. We have to, very importantly, improve the situation of citizen security. And very importantly, we have to start dealing with the issue of impunity. I do not think that unless our society deals with the issue of impunity, it will be very difficult until we can finally say that we have reached the end of the road. So, very briefly, I would say this is why I believe it is important that we celebrate this anniversary, so that we can look back, feel proud of what we have accomplished, but at the same time, make a commitment to continue working so that next time we get together, the glass will be full. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador, for those wise and insightful words. And on behalf of Montgomery College, the students of Montgomery College, we present to you a gift. I would like to introduce to you the man who will be giving the county's proclamation. I present to you Montgomery County's Executive Ike Leggett.
Some years ago, when we had an opportunity to develop the county's sister-city relationship. I realized that there were quite a few countries and counties and cities all over the world who really wanted to partner with Montgomery County. But I made a decision that I knew that we would be going around the world and visiting many places, that the first place that we will establish a sister-city relationship for Montgomery County would be in El Salvador. I think that was a wonderful decision for the county, and one that I think we will continue to build the bonds of friendship for many years to come. I'm looking forward, hopefully this year, to go back to continue the efforts that we've made to cement this relationship for many years to come. I have the opportunity now to present a proclamation on behalf of Montgomery County, and I'll read this and present it in just a second. Montgomery County Proclamation, whereas the Salvadorian American community in Montgomery County represents the largest immigrant population, numbering over 60,000 residents, and contributes to the substantial growth of the county's economic and multicultural fabric. And whereas we join to celebrate with our community partners, organizations, individuals, multicultural institutions, and foreign governments, such as the Embassy of El Salvador, and whereas the Salvadorians here in Montgomery County and in El Salvador continue to strive for a better tomorrow, full hope and peace. Now therefore do I, Zell Leggett, as County Executive, hereby congratulate the Salvadorian community, American community of Montgomery County, Maryland, and the entire DC metropolitan area on the occasion of the celebration of the 23rd anniversary of the Peace Accords of El Salvador that resulted in the end of the tragic chapter of the country's recent history. I encourage our residents to recognize the valuable contributions that the Salvadorian American community makes to our counties and the cities, and to join in our ongoing commitment to peace and prosperity with our communities here and in El Salvador. And it's signed by me this day, Zell Leggett, as County Executive. Congratulations. I'm not sure we had an opportunity earlier to recognize it, but Senator Cardin's representative is here, Ken Richard is here, and I hope that you recognize the fact that he's here. And of course, our #1 representative from El Salvador, who represents us so well throughout the state of Maryland, Delegate Anasoka Perez. Thank you for being here.
It is my pleasure to introduce our panel's moderator and Montgomery College Director of Community Engagement, whom has had almost 2 decades of experience in community engagement, education, and youth development, and who has served as the Latino liaison to the County Executive in Montgomery County Office of Community Partnerships. I present to you Ms. Carla Silvestre.
Good evening, everybody. Buenas noches. My name is Carla Silvestre. I am the Director of Community Engagement here at Montgomery College. I'm originally from Guatemala, so I'm honored to be here with the Salvadorian community and the Salvadorian youth that are joining us in this panel. I was very thrilled to have the opportunity to moderate this panel because, as the county executive has said, and as Dr. Stewart has mentioned, the Salvadorian youth here in Montgomery County is the largest group of Latinos and definitely the largest immigrant group in our public schools, in our community. And so the future of Montgomery County depends on the success of our Salvadorian youth. The future of El Salvador also depends on the success of Salvadorian youth here and in El Salvador. So I'm very interested in what they have to say, and I think we all should be very interested in what they have to say. So here with me tonight, I just want to name who is with us, Ricardo Campos. They're all going to introduce themselves later on, but I just want to mention who they are. Carlos Martinez, Catherine Maldonado, Marvin Centeno, and Felipe Rodriguez. Let's give them a round of applause. So I'm going to ask Ricardo to please introduce himself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, just your name, your age, what you're doing right now, what you want to be when you grow up, where your family's from in El Salvador, and so forth.
My name is Ricardo Campos. I'm originally from San Salvador. I'm a proud Salvadorian and I'm a proud resident of Montgomery County. I work as a social services coordinator at Casa de Maryland. And well, I'm also a student at Montgomery College because I believe that it's good to keep educating ourselves because this world is endless, is with endless opportunities. So thank you very much for having me tonight.
Round of applause for Carlos. Carlos.
Hello, my name is Carlos Gerardo Martinez. I was born in El Salvador. I came here in 2013. I was raised in San Salvador where I studied all I know about the Peace Accords, so I'm here to share my experiences. And well, it's a great opportunity to get to know more of the Salvadoran community here in Maryland. And I'm looking for a business degree right now. I'm currently on my last year, sorry. And well, it's a great opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Catherine.
Hello, my name is Catherine Maldonado. I am a second-year Montgomery College student. I was born in El Salvador. My family is originally from Jocoro, Morazan. We moved here 17 years ago when I was 3 years old. And I'm glad to be here to be speaking about what I know about the Peace Accord and the experiences of my family.
Can you tell us what you're going to study when you transfer?
Yeah, sorry. I plan to transfer next year, and I am studying for nursing.
Marvin.
My name is Marvin Centeno. I am from Los Angeles, born to Salvadorian parents. I am a student at the University of California, Santa Cruz, where I study Latin American and Latina studies and combined with global economics. I tend to pursue a PhD career in the future within the international relations field, and I'm currently conducting a thesis in terms of the role of Salvadorians in the U.S. and in the politics of El Salvador. So,
did you tell us where you were from El Salvador?
Oh, my family is from Chalatenango, but I lived in Santa Ana for 10 years. So,
thank you.
My name is Felipe Rodriguez. I was born in El Salvador. I'm 26 years old, and I have a bachelor in economics from the Central American University back in El Salvador. The last 3 months I have lived here in New Jersey, and right now I'm studying at Kaplan Center, International Center, getting ready for the GRE test to apply for a master in international economics. And well, my father is from Chalatenango and my mother is from Sulutan.
Thank you. We are going to have a question and answer session after the panel. So Gloria is walking around and Paola is walking around with cards. If you have questions, take a card and something might come up during the panel that you want to ask more about, and we can address that afterwards. So I want to start with Carlos.
I feel like I'm proud of being Salvadorian because I get to know all the history of my country. It's a rich history. And even though right now youth may seem like history, they don't like it, but keeping history, learning about history is like keeping our identity. And well, by learning the Peace Accords and all of the Civil War, all of the things that happened in the 20th century, we get to know more about the country. We get to know more about how to develop ourselves, how to develop our nation to become more prosperous. And what I know about the Peace Accords, well, that it was a conclusion of all the events that happened during the 20th century. mostly about the Civil War. And well, the main objectives were that there was change in objectives that the army pursued, because before the army only was used to oppress society, was only used to oppress governments that were opposing the government. And with this restructurization of the army, there's no more violence from the government to the population. Also, there was this democratization of the country, where the FMLN, which was before a guerrilla, now has become a political party that, well, it includes many people from society to participate in politics, and right now they are in the government.
So these are things that you have learned in school.
Yes, yes.
Would you say that there's also a dialogue in the country about the peace accords? So do people talk about it, or is it mostly in school that this is addressed?
No. Well, it's mostly talk about society. Because in my family, they used to talk a lot about it. So I always had this curiosity to learn more about it. And so in school, even though it's been only 30 years, it's been a great progress that society has achieved, that we as youth get to know more and to develop the nation.
Thank you. So Marvin, you came here 5 years ago, is that right? And you settled in California. From your perspective, what have you learned? What do you know about the peace accords? Can you tell us about that?
Well, let me tell you that before even coming to the U.S., it was hard. Living in El Salvador, it was hard to understand. As part of a generation that was born after the peace accords, it was difficult to understand the political climate and what the peace accords meant until I got to college and joined the UCEU. UCEU is the continuation of the Salvadorian student movement in El Salvador. From El Salvador here in California. It's taken on the legacy of AGEUS, which is the Asociación General de Estudiantes Salvadoreños. And it's there where I became what you might call politicized, or I began to understand what my role was in the Salvadorian community and why I'm here today. Just to add a little bit more, that's through organizing among other Salvadorian students, it was unique to understand what's the ending of a war that left more than 75,000 Salvadorians dead meant, and beginning to with these discussions, we have in our classrooms, from our classrooms, and in our community. It was amazing to see how the peace accords were possible because people were fighting, to change the country. Church workers, the church, the workers, university, campesinos, mujeres, women, and all sectors of society who were part of this resistance, and to change, to dreaming of a better country, So. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
It was. Yeah.
Catherine, I know your family. You came here when you were 3, so your family has been here a while now. Can you tell us a bit about your experience, the experience of your family? What do you know, what have you asked your family about what it was like for them before the peace accords, and maybe if afterwards as well?
Okay, yeah, so I wasn't born at the time of the Civil War before the peace accord, but my dad, he was a college student. Like I said, he was from Morazán, and he went to school in the city, and it was a long commute for him. And so coming into this, I really didn't know much about the peace accord or the Civil War. But when I did ask him about it, he told me about how in the city it was dangerous to commute from where he was from to the city, and because of the war happening, he had to miss a lot of school. Unlike the people who lived in the city, they continued going to school, but since it was a long commute from where my dad was, it was hard for him to commute and continue going to school. So he had to miss a lot of school, and it got him, he was a little behind, and yeah, basically it was dangerous to go out. So after the peace accord, the political and social violence ended, even though the situation still isn't perfect in El Salvador, but it was a step, an important step to making the situation in El Salvador better.
Okay, thank you. Felipe, you just came here a couple months ago, so your family has experienced the entire process before the peace accords and after the peace accords. Can you tell us a little bit about your family's experience and how has it affected you?
Okay, well, it's funny because when I used to think about the peace accords, I didn't think about my personal experience. But I think that my personal experience is a good way to, it's a good example of if the peace accords were working or not. And both my father and my mother and also my stepfather were guerrilla members. And my father died when I was 1 year old. So it's, so I have to live with my grandma, and I have to live with my sister and my grandparents. And my sister also didn't know my mother until she was 7 years old. So, yeah. And the peace accords basically just gave us the opportunity to live as a normal family, to have normal lives. I had an education, good education, and I could enjoy my family, my sister, my parents, and most importantly, I think that I could live in a democracy. And, for that, I think that they worked.
Thank you. Ricardo, how about you? What was your experience? I know you came when you were 12 years old.
That's right. And, well, I came to the U.S. when I was 12. I was born in 1989. And most of what I know about war and what was happening at the time is that my mother had to grab me and run from bullets with me on hand because violence and crime and the army and were pretty much abusing civilians. And my mom told me all the time how it was very sad for her not even being able to go to school, not even able to be able to go to college, and not being able to know if she was going to be able to live and to see his kid grow up. So it was very sad. It's very sad every time I heard my parents talk about this. My dad, he had to drop off school, college, because he was threatened multiple times. He was almost killed on one occasion, and it was horrible. Nobody could live in peace. Now, that was before. I was 3 years and a half when the peace accord were signed. And those are most of the memories I have from El Salvador. I remember being able to grow up, go to the street, play with my friends without the fear that nothing will happen. But I remember my father, every time he would go to the airport to pick up grandma or pick her family or whoever, for whatever reason he will have to go to the airport, he will say, just stay home. It's too dangerous for you to go. And, you know, I remember myself crying there, like wanting to go with my dad, wanting to be with my family, wanting to enjoy some time with them. But it was very difficult at the moment. But after the peace accord, everything changed. And it was a gradual change. It wasn't night or morning. But as Ambassador Ashul was saying, we were starting to fill up the glass, and we're starting to move forward.
So many times I hear that families really don't talk about it. So how did this come up in conversation at home for you?
Well, my parents were really open about it. You know, many of our friends and other relatives did not really speak about it because those are moments that are too sad or traumatize future generations. But my parents, I still remember my mom singing, "Me contaron que bajo el asfalto existe un mundo distinto con gente que nunca vio el sol." And, you know, she sang that to me since I was a baby. And those are words that ring on my head, that she couldn't see the sun, but it got to the point where we saw the sun shining and really bright. And I'm very, very proud of my parents, and I'm very happy that they opened up to me and that I was able to know about the history, because this is what actually makes the change, educating our community about our history so we don't make the same mistakes.
What do you... Catherine, Margaret, why do you guys think people don't talk about it sometimes? Why do you think families don't address it?
I don't know, maybe it was a hard time for them. I know my parents didn't really talk to me about it. I had to ask my dad for him to tell me. I don't know, it just never came up. Maybe he just didn't want to, I don't know, remember it, or I don't know. And I guess that was part of the reason why he moved us here, to get away from all the violence and to make sure we had a better life than what he had.
Margaret, I'm going to move on to you. I know that you are very active in your university in California. Why do you think Salvadoran youth should care about what is happening currently in El Salvador?
Well, just to backtrack a little bit about Catherine said, you know, it's almost like our mission as, you know, our generation to reclaim our historical memory. It's, you know, as young people, you know, we want to change the world, you know. As we live in times of inequality and discrimination as Salvadorians living in the U.S. Even though we might get discouraged when mobilizing in the Salvadorian community, we come with a unique history of resistance, fighting for social justice. This history is an inspiration because of what it achieved, ending, you know, getting the Peace Accords, and that made it possible for a government that to have the opportunity to promote the values of social justice and meet the needs of the people. This is why I organize in CISPES and in el Museo. CISPES is the community in solidarity with the people of El Salvador, where I currently intern from here in Washington, D.C. I do this work because I want to be part of this change. This is why I'm going to El Salvador this summer with CISPES in its third literacy brigade that supports the Ministry of Education and its goal of eradicating illiteracy. You know, and I, you know, want to open up, you know, the space to invite you all and everyone to participate, you know, in the CISPES delegation and learn more about what's happening in El Salvador and be part of the transformation and change. There's going to be more information around as you go out on the table, and if you have more questions, you can just feel free to ask me at the end. But this is one of the avenues where the Salvadorian youth gets to be involved in the process of transforming our, you know, country here in the U.S. You know, what does it mean to be Salvadorian here in the U.S., in the East Coast? That's a question my compas asked himself in California, and it is until we actually be a part and choose to be part and break that cultural silence that has silenced our, you know, our parents or our relatives, you know, and it's part of a process of, you know, collective action, a process of healing and reconciliation, you know, with the past. You know, we have all gone through, well, in certain, you know, political lineage, you know, since the Civil War and after now. what is our role within the Salvadorian community?
We want to hear you, so make sure you put your microphone up
Oh,
there.
sorry. I got a little inspired.
Did you, I wanted to ask you, did you start university in El Salvador or here in California? In California, okay, great. Felipe, I want to ask you about remembering. It's a very painful history, it is our history. Why do you think it's so important to remember, to have that historical memory of what happened?
Well, I try to explain with an example. When you go to a doctor, you're sick, they will ask you, how do you feel? To know if you have to catch the flu, for example. But also he will ask you to, if you drink, if you smoke, if you have a diet, if you do any exercise. Those questions are historical memory. I mean, the sickness of El Salvador is, that is a poor country, that the Salvadoran people suffers from exclusion. But if you want to solve our problems, we have to look for our historical memory. So I think that if we want to solve some problems like migration, like exclusion, or poverty, we have to look for our historical memory, not to open our wounds, but to heal them.
Thank you. Ricardo, how can you work at Casa de Maryland? You have been here for a while now. How do we encourage, same theme, how do we encourage young people to learn about the history of El Salvador? How do we keep that historical memory alive in our Salvadoran youth here in Montgomery County or in Maryland?
Well, I think first of all that we have to start with our youth. We have to start with educating our community about the pain and the suffering that our people had. As I said previously, we don't want this horrific events to happen again in our society. And I think that passing on that information and embracing, and as they previously mentioned, engage the youth to know about the history prevents us from doing that. And also, it helps us to fill up that glass of water. It helps us to fill up and achieve justice and peace. And I think that's not only something that we have to learn about, but it's something that we have to put in practice. And I believe that through education and through passing out knowledge, to open up to our parents, to going back to those difficult moments, is the only way how we can actually keep memory alive. That's the only way how we can rescue history and prevent it from making those mistakes again. Thank you.
Marvin, what do you think? How do we, why is it important to remember? How do we get our young people to become interested, get involved?
First of all, I think right now this is a great start, organizing events in which we are able to speak in a safe space about our history, like the Peace Accords. But I encourage, it is important to encourage, Salvadoran and, and among Salvadorans that, we have history of resistance that didn't begin, in the Peace Accords. It goes way back. It goes to 1932 with an indigenous uprising. That to be indigenous means to be anti-American or anti-capitalist. It's the genesis of the military dictatorship that lasted 60 years. And so on. That comes all the way to, organizations trying in all sectors, teachers, unions trying to, say and stop what was, the repression going on. And it is until we begin to encourage other students that, like Felipe and Ricky said, we're gonna begin to reconcile, to heal those wounds. But it's only until we voice our histories. But not many of our parents or relatives, tell us the way, we're having this moment, this space right now. Not everybody is able. It is basically our mission, like I said at the beginning, to go and do research, ask where we come from, in order to control our destiny, in order to know where we're going right now. So,
great, thank you. Let's give our panelists a round of applause for their courageous stories.